What is up, crew? It's your boy Kaycem, and on today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to study other different art styles, and we're going to be going over things like proportions, stylistic choices, and of course, some good old shape design. Now, if it's your first time here, welcome in. My name is Kaycem. I am a Filipino art streamer and also a full-time character designer, having worked for studios that have done stuff like Castlevania, Legends of Machina, and more. And so if you are into some free art education or you want to hang out with my dog over there, make sure to like and subscribe if you're watching from YouTube, and also to follow me here on Twitch if you're watching me live. But with that being said, let's get into today's stream as we go over 3 different examples that I've picked out today. They're all kind of the anime-esque style, but they do have slightly different proportions, and so I want to be able to show you how all of these work. But with that, let's get started. We got here again these three poses. So the first thing I'm going to do here with you guys is I'm actually just going to put a quick white layer on top. So that way, when I do draw over these, it'll be a little bit easier to see. I've been getting a few questions about, why I do the white layer over on YouTube. And really the main thing is mostly just because it, when you're having it here like this, you can trace over a drawing a lot easier and see the lines a lot better. There really isn't much magic sauce other than that. It's not like a secret Illuminati technique or whatever. It's just that, kind of like imagine a traditional artist putting some translucent paper over drawing and tracing it. Now, speaking of tracing, what I want to make sure that we're doing here is we're not just copying the details of this character, right? This character's got a lot of great details, but the main focus here is to really break down the simple forms and be able to really understand what's going on there. Because when I used to study different art styles, I didn't realize I wasn't really studying them. I was just trying to copy and mimic them. The other day, I kind of had like this weird memory lane thing where I went on like my Facebook and I was looking through my old art posts that I did, back when I was like in middle school and stuff. And I had all these like anime fan arts, and no joke, someone in the comments was like, "You traced this, didn't you?" And I had the audacity to lie and be like, "Never. I did this from imagination." But like, come on, bro. It's literally, you could Google the picture that I referenced and that I probably copied from. But it's important when you are studying these things that you're not focusing on all the little details. It's so easy to get caught up in the details, but instead I want you guys to try to choose simple shapes, right? Try to use these circle shapes, maybe some triangles, maybe some squares, but avoid doing this. Avoid kind of going in here and trying to capture all the bumps, because they're not really going to help you in terms of understanding the proportions. But yeah, I don't know. Has that ever happened to you guys? Put an F in the chat if you've ever tried to pretend like you didn't use a reference for a drawing when, come on, you did. I did that all the time as a kid. I don't know why. I don't know why when I was younger, I was like so obsessed with this idea that using references was bad for you. Like if you used references, you're a cheater, type of thing. But in reality, it's like using references is pretty common. If anything, what you could say is the skill to develop, right? Like how do you use references? I think is maybe the more valuable thing. But now for those of you who are following along here, you're going to realize that this challenge right here can get a little tricky, because let's say, for example, you have this character and she has all of these clothes on her, right? Now you kind of have to use your own intuition to figure out like, okay, where exactly am I going to find the torso here? Where exactly am I going to find the hips here, right? And a lot of these things might be tricky if this is your first time really trying to do this type of tracing or this type of study where you're trying to observe it and figure out the underlying details. Now, some tips that I'm going to do for you guys is a lot of great art will actually indicate the anatomy underneath the clothing very subtly. And I'll show you 2 examples. This right here, notice this curvature change. This right here, it's so subtle, but the artist is insanely good, because what they're doing is they're actually telling you, hey, you know what? The pelvis is right here, man. Boom, boom, boom. Look at that. But it's all subtle, right? You don't have to actually denote all the wrinkles and stuff. Sometimes you can just kind of figure that out right there. And then from here, maybe I'll kind of add a little bit more of a curve just to kind of really denote the separation there of the pelvis from the greater trochanter, the femur, and this whole portion of the leg. But it's a lot of subtle details that you can utilize. Similarly here, I'm going to try to line up the lines here, right? And here, for example, on this side, there's not a lot of good lines to indicate from, but a simple rule that you can think about is the human body, for the most part, all of us will have a relatively symmetrical body from this side to this side, right? Obviously, there's variances and stuff. Some of you might have really strong right arms and right forearms, but very weak left arms. I don't know why. Don't ask me, all right? You ask yourself. But some things that you can do here is that, for example, I know that this side, the left side here, has a general line I could follow. And so if I can find the center line of this character, right, where the general kind of flow is, I can use that to kind of find the positioning on the other side, basically. So even though you don't have all the information right away, you can use these type of things to kind of figure out the underlying forms. In a way, what we're doing here is kind of like, I don't know if you guys have ever played Sudoku. It's like the game where you have like a grid. It's like a 9x9 grid. No, it's like a 9x9 grid, and you have to like figure out the missing numbers, right? And you can only figure it out by using the numbers that already exist. I feel like this is kind of that, but like the art version of that, where you are trying to like guess the information that you have or that you're given. And from that information, being able to be like, okay, I see now, this is where the form is. And like, we got to figure out like right here. Right. So it's all kind of, yeah, it's like a Sudoku, but like different, very artsy. So here I'm going to kind of end the wrist right here. And the reason why is because I'm using what the artist is doing, which is a separation of the fold here. And so I'm using that to kind of like help me figure out like, oh, okay, you know what? This is probably where the arm is going to kind of bend right here. And then right here on this side, we do have the anatomy right there. So I'm going to kind of give a little bit of a curve, and I'm just going to kind of utilize, again, some of the little bits of information that the artist is using to be able to, for myself, figure out what the heck is going on. Now, some people will draw the elbows, some will not. Generally, for these type of studies, it depends. But for now, I'm just going to say no elbows. I think it makes it easier for you guys to kind of see the 3D forms, right? If you can see, for example, the bottom plane of this cylinder, it's a little bit more clear what the heck I'm doing. So you can imagine that's kind of what's going on there with the arm, and then we'll do that on the other side as well. But here we're gonna get into this side. Now here's where things get a little interesting, because I feel like if you take a look at this arm, right, this arm is actually pretty long. Like, wow, I'm a little baffled by how long this arm is, because generally speaking, if the arm length is around here and it's bending here, I feel like this arm should end about here. Again, this is part of the studying, right? It's like understanding how these artists are breaking down these proportions, because if you take a look without having to do the draw over and you look at it, you probably wouldn't think anything is wrong with it. It looks like a good drawing, right? Which is another important call out here, that sometimes you don't have to follow the anatomy, right? But I do think this is my take here. I do think this arm is a little long. Now, there's a few things that we can do to maybe justify this arm being a little bit longer. One thing that we could do is we can assume that the character is actually maybe shrugging their shoulder a little bit, like so, right? This will lengthen it out a little bit. But personally, this is my take, I think that the arms should actually be a little bit higher. I don't know. I think the perspective of I think so, but here's the thing, it's not that much, right? It's a little bit of a subtle perspective. So I'm going to call out here, this is me, and I might be wrong here. But I'm going to say I would ideally move this arm just a little bit up. Like that. Just a little bit. A tad bit higher. And I think that will make it feel a little bit more normal. But it's interesting. It's interesting when you see these things, right? It's interesting when you see these things, because it does kind of show you that anatomy is not the most important thing. Sometimes it's really all about the overall look and feel of your character. So keep that in mind, unless you're doing an educational stream like this, where we really get into the weeds and kind of break it down. But let's take a look at that now, before and after. Yeah, that seems Seems all right. I will say what we could do too is, let me kind of bring it up a little bit. Maybe it's dislocated. Oh, that's true. You know what? We don't know, because this could be part of the character, right? Maybe this is like a scene from the story. Maybe this is like a character who's fighting and they got their arm dislocated. That could totally be a possibility, in which case the socket of the arm here would kind of sag a little bit more, which would give us a little bit of that additional length. You know what? We'll never know. Or the bag is really heavy and it's being dropped down. But the only thing is, if it was the case, I would like to have seen maybe a little bit more of the shoulder drop here, like that, to kind of really showcase that. So maybe I'll give this artist the benefit of the doubt, because I don't want to say they're wrong. You know, again, it's mostly just us trying to study and see what's going on. But I think we could do something like this. I'm going to give it a little bit more room, but I still do think it's a little long. That's just me. That's just what I think. Again, when you do these studies, sometimes you'll also realize that artists are not perfect, right? I'm not saying this artist is wrong, but what I'm trying to say here is, you know, sometimes when we see our favorite artists on Instagram and all of that stuff, when we think like, man, this artist is incredible, everything they do is perfect. But if you ever actually pause to look at some of the stuff that artists are doing, you'll see a lot of like tiny little mistakes or tiny things. But a lot of the times you don't notice it unless you're really actively looking for it, you know, right? Like, how many of you guys have ever done this before? You posted something on Instagram or Twitter or wherever have you, and the moment you post it, you like realize that you made a mistake. Put an F in the chat if you've ever done that. You're like, oh, shoot, I forgot to do this. Or like, I should have changed this. Or like the eye looks off or something, right? And so I think this is just a good call out to say that like artists are not perfect, no matter what skill level they are, right? The only times really where I think you would see a very like perfect, quote unquote, perfect art is if you're looking at industry art that has gone through multiple revisions and also has gone through multiple artists, right? So for example, a League of Legends splash art. I don't know if you guys know this, but a lot of League of Legends splash arts will take like about a month to draw and usually gets revised or reviewed by like 2-3 other people, right? And so maybe one, but you know, what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of people that actually go through reviewing it. And so it's not just like one artist is like, I'm just going to go whip up a League of Legends drawing and then just submit it. You know, it goes through a lot of revisions. So unless you're talking about those, or maybe even in the animation industry, right, where people look at and review the work, it's, thank you. Appreciate that. Appreciate the prime sub. Otherwise, yeah, it's like completely fine. Like it's a normal thing to, what's it called? To have mistakes, right? It's part of the process. And I think we as artists can learn from that and realize that, you know, as if we can kind of move away from the obsession of trying to make perfect art, you'll realize that life will be so much better. Life will be so much nicer. Yeah. But all right, let's kind of speed up here and let's get into the legs. Now this leg, this is crazy. This leg is nuts. Because this leg, this is the ankle bone right there. Wow. That's nuts. How? No, but it works. It works. Actually, that works. See, I'm learning stuff too, right? This is, again, the beauty of understanding art styles, because it shows you just how many different types of solutions there are that an artist can play with, and something that maybe I would have not thought of doing or trying. When you actually study it, you're like, wait a minute, this makes a whole lot of sense. I can see how this length of leg, when tapered this way, still holds up pretty soundly. So we like to see it. Here I'm going to simplify and I'm going to get rid of the boots. I'm imagining the feet underneath the boots underneath the booth. So just kind of doing something like that right there. Let's see. Drink some water too. Thanks for the hydration, guys. Yeah, I think it's a stylistic choice, which is fine, right? I think, again, this is why we're doing this exercise to begin with, is to show you guys, how you don't have to follow all of the specific anatomy. If anything, these are generalizations that you can kind of, tweak and stuff. Like, I've been getting a lot of comments on one of my YouTube videos about, I think it was like one of the art roast videos I did. And it was going over the proportion techniques. And there were a lot of comments of people asking me like, hey, is this proportion technique the only technique? Because I've seen other artists draw really long characters or really short characters or whatever. And my answer is always, no, it's not, right? You can do whatever you want with your characters. The most important thing, I believe, is to have confidence. Is to have confidence with your work. And have confidence and consistency with your decision making, because I think that's going to be the biggest thing, right? For example, if I were to draw these arms really long, but I don't draw the legs really long, it might actually look weird, right? But because the artist did draw both the arms and the legs really long, it actually works. It works really well as a design, and I'm very interested when we get to it. I'm very interested in seeing how the proportions of this play out, because something tells me that the proportions are also still going to work despite some of the kookiness I'm seeing here. And not kookiness in a bad way. I'm just so shook. Like, do you guys see the curvature on this leg? Wow. That's crazy. It defies my understanding of anatomy, because this curvature, to me, I'm going to explain why I think it's crazy. I know some of you are probably just like, bro, it's just the leg, Kaycem. I know. Okay, but let me explain. So usually this curvature right here, when an artist utilizes this curve, they're usually utilizing the curvature of the tibia bone, right? So if you imagine here, this is the femur bone like this. This is the femur like that, right? Here, you'll kind of see here the utilization of the tibia, and the tibia kind of has a nice curvature to it. And then you have here the fibula on the other side like this, right? But this curvature usually is where that shin bone area is of the curve. So the artist is using it here, but the part that's crazy about it is if you take a look at the foot is actually curved and facing this way, which means this should actually be like the calves, but it's not there. And despite it not being there, it still works. So here's what I think. I'm going to be assuming here, but I think that there's actually some calves right here, like that. And then we have a curvature like this. That's what I'm going to assume, because otherwise, that's crazy. I don't know. I think stuff like this is super fun. Like, when you really get into studying other artists and stuff, you'll start to realize that studying is not actually boring. I used to hate studying. I put an F in the chat if you've ever been there, right? When I was first starting out, I just wanted to draw fan art. I just wanted to do, my anime drawings and stuff. And then whenever my art teachers would be like, oh, you should study this and study that, I don't know. I used to get really be like whatever about it. Like, oh, dude, I got to study? Like, that's kind of lame. Like, I got to read this book about color theory or this and that. But now I love it. Now it's like, I don't know, to me, this kind of stuff is like so, I don't know, so mind blowing. When you just see like, dude, how did this artist come up with this solution for this leg and made it work so well? So let's get into, we're going to get into, I'm going to do a simplified version here of the hands, but let's get into the other hand here. Then we'll take a look at the proportions that we've got. And then we'll see what we cooked up here, because I'm very interested in seeing some of the breakdown that we did, right? But again, this is usually the first step that I do, is I look at the proportions of the character, because you'll see some of the subtlety is there. Like, you might look at this and you might think, yeah, this is my art style. But even for me, when I copied it, I was like, wow, I'm learning a lot. You still hate it? It's okay. Some of you might still hate studying, and that is completely fine. Studying can still be a chore, right? It can be a chore, and especially if you're like having a hard time really having something click in your head, it can really feel frustrating. So I totally get it. Let's see. Kaycem, what made you select these pieces to study the artist's style? I think I liked how they all looked, and I thought that they were all kind of relatively the same type of body, but they were all different stylistically. And so I wanted to showcase that even within the realm of anime, where you have these type of lean characters, even then there's going to be variation between the three. And that was really my main what's it called? My main reason of choosing these type of things. But yeah, great question, by the way. All right, let's go ahead now and let me do one more thing, which is I'm just going to line up where the eyes will be here. And then sometimes what I like to do is I like to kind of just find the mask of the eyes. You can either do it here on the eye itself, or you can do it using the brows. It doesn't really matter. Just kind of like a weird goggle thing, kind of like a superhero thing. Sometimes I'll do this, sometimes I don't, but I kind of like to see where the placement is of the eyes. But now let's go ahead and let's put away this reference really quick. And let's see here. You know what? Maybe we don't do it for this one. Maybe we just do this. And let's do a simplified version where we just kind of capture the eye itself. Upper portion there of the lids, lower portion mark, and then a little bit of a roundness like so. Okay, there you go. Kind of like that. But let's go see. Let's go see what we got here. So you can kind of take a look here, and when you start seeing how the form looks like, right, and you really start to break down the simplified shapes, right, you'll kind of see like, okay, you know what? It works really well. And if anything, guys, I wonder if we should make that arm longer. Let me think. Yeah, it's crazy how well it works. But anyways, we have here our proportions. And so what I want to do with you guys is I want to actually take a look at the height of this character. And let's see if things line up. So generally speaking, right? Generally speaking, the halfway mark of a, what's it called? The halfway mark of a character should be roughly where that pelvis region lands. And it should be somewhere around here. So let me go ahead and see if I can do this. And I'm going to use the grid to see if I can find that halfway mark. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So that should be about 6.5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So and a half right here, right? So this should be right here. Now I'm going to move it back down because I shifted it up just to align with the grid. So I would say it's roughly here in this case, in this art style, the halfway mark of the legs to the bottom of the feet right here is going to be about where that pelvis basically lands, right? Top of the head to the base of the feet. And again, I'm putting the base of the feet here, right here, because you have to imagine there's perspective, right? So they're standing on like a box like this. So I would say that's pretty cool, pretty consistent there. So this is about 1/2 right here. And then from here, there should be about a halfway mark where the knees usually land. But in this case, it's a little bit higher up, right? So again, the whole point of all this is just to be able to show you guys how different artists break down their proportions. And that way, when you start to do these type of things, you can kind of get an idea of what works and what doesn't work. But it looks to me like maybe the armpits are landing somewhere around here, right? Her body's tilted, so it's something like that, but it's like right about here. And this will just kind of give you a general idea of how to start placing your own proportions and stuff moving forward. At least if you want to go for an art style that is similar to this look and feel. Now, other things I like to look at whenever I'm studying an art style is I'm also interested in seeing some of the shape design and the level of detail that an artist will use. So for example, I like to highlight certain areas, right? So maybe let's pick this color here. And you can kind of see, if I get rid of this and maybe even lower some of this, we can take a look at the subtlety of details. So when, for example, a character is drawing an arm, right, this clothing right here, how much lines are they using, right? So here it looks like they got 1, 2, 3 folds like that. And then they have here a bunch of dense folds like this. So I'm kind of using these to kind of help me figure out how this artist would utilize these type of folds and to kind of see that level of intricacy. So I would say this is relatively detailed. I wouldn't see this in an animation, but I wouldn't say it's like overly detailed. I think this is more of like a manga style, you know, not too complicated, but we are seeing a decent number of folds. Like right here, we're seeing a fold here, overlapping there. And I'm trying to simplify it. So you guys can kind of see here, I'm trying to break it up into big shapes and not trying to copy every single detail. So this is, again, something that you can start looking at as well, right? Looking into breaking down each and individual shape, but not trying to get too complicated with it. So there you go. And you can kind of see when you start doing it like this, you can actually also get a feel too for what the artists are choosing for their lines, right? So you have here, for example, 1, 2, 3. Right? That's kind of their thematic choice here. They do it over here as well with the 1, 2, 3. And so you can kind of see how they're trying to choose the details that they have here for their character. Let's see if there's anything I want to call out that I like about this style. I think that's about it that I think we can look at for this one, right? So all of that to say, it's cool to kind of see all of these things work together to kind of break it all down and study the proportions, study the way that they do clothing, study the level of detail. And that's generally something that I do. Now, let's actually do one last thing, because someone asked this in the chat, which is a great question. How many heads tall is this character? Now, this character, I would say, because they are a teenage character, it seems like, I would probably give them, let's do this color. I would say they're probably somewhere around 6 to 7 heads tall. But this is going to be about that rough approximation, like right about here, top of the head there. So let's go ahead and see how that all kind of lines up, right? Let's just see. Let's play around here with this proportion. Put your guesses in the chat. 1, 2, 3, 4. She might be about 7. Let's see here. Oh, look at this. She's a half. So she's, this is 1. Oh, hold on. 1. I'll do it like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and a half. Wow. There you go. So she's about 6.5 heads tall, which is, I would say, roughly about what I was expecting to see from a character that's in that teenage range, right? Usually 6 to 7 heads is kind of the standard in a lot of these type of art styles for drawing teenage characters, whereas 7 to 8 heads tall is where we get more of the adult proportions and stuff. But I have a feeling the other one that we're going to look at will probably have like maybe 7 heads tall. But let's go ahead and put all this away, right? So we have all of these references. We did the breakdowns here, and I hope this was interesting or at least insightful for those of you guys who are watching here live and also watching from YouTube. But again, these are some of the things I'm looking for when I'm starting out and trying to figure out the proportions, right? But now let's get into, maybe we'll do one more. Let's do this guy version here, because I feel like this character from Soul Eater is going to have some more interesting proportions that'll be very different from the one we have on the left here. Let's move it over. Okay, cool. Pretty good. Pretty good. All right. Any questions, by the way, in the chat about like what we're doing out here? And if you guys are curious, this is actually what I do all the time whenever I'm studying for example, preparing to work for a studio or preparing to work on a production, and I'm trying to land a particular show's art style, this is the type of stuff that I would do. And I'll show you some other examples that I did for example, Legend of Korra, where, let me see if I can find it. When I was studying and prepping for the art style of Legend of Korra, I would do stuff like this, right? Where I would actually take the characters' heads, the turns and stuff, really break down and get into the detail of the proportions. And even stuff like this, you watch, oh, this is so crazy. When you see it for the first time, you'll be baffled. But like, if you take a look, right, you probably wouldn't think much about this face. But if you take a look at this, look at how perfect a lot of these things line up. They're parallel in such a nice way that when you actually see them, you're kind of like, wait a minute, what's going on here, right? But if you were to just kind of look at the character the first time around, you probably wouldn't notice a lot of these like subtle details and shapes that they're using. Another great example of this is when you actually line up, watch this, if you line up the hairline, right, and take it down vertically, lines up right here. This one right here lines up with the eyes, and then this one lines up right here with the end of this brow, right? And then this right here, it lines up with this. Here, this one right here, where does it line up with? Right here, right? This right here lines up right here. This right here lines up right here. You see that? There's that, they actually line up pretty closely. So then when you take it over here, side view, look at this. It still holds. You see that? So it's very subtle, right? You can kind of go here and kind of tweak it a little bit. But this is some of the stuff that a lot of studios do that you guys don't think about, because you're kind of just like, yeah, it looks good to me. But when you really get into the details and break down a lot of these proportions and a lot of these shapes and stuff, you'll start to realize just how intentional a lot of the designs are. So again, the power of studying, chat. The power of studying is God tier out here. But let's go back to some of our examples. We're going to get into the next one right here, which is going to be Soul. And yeah, I'm excited for this one. So I'm thinking for this one, I actually think his head is a little bit wider, like this. I don't know if you guys have never heard of this anime, Soul Eater. It was, I think when it came out, it was such a, I don't know, it felt very experimental in a way. And I feel like it was such a nice art style to see when it came out. I don't think a lot of people liked it though, interestingly enough. I think when it came out, it was kind of polarizing at the time because of the art style and stuff. And I think it also didn't get a lot of additional seasons, which is a huge shame. But I think it's a great show. And the art style is beautiful. It's one that I like to study on occasion, mostly because it's such a, I don't know how else to say it. I think it's just such a unique art style, and we'll get into the shape design in a bit of what they do, but I don't know. It's very cool, which is why I love, again, emphasis on loving to study. Wow, such a nerd, Kaycem. This study right here is actually going to be a bit of a tricky one for me, even because this one's actually very far, very far from my own art style. And so just seeing how it even works and trying to make my own understanding of it, I think will be a fun one to do. And this is something that I encourage you guys to do as well, right? If you are, for example, if you've already got a style that you've locked in and stuff, try exploring other art styles that you normally wouldn't study and see if you can try to make some sense out of it. And I guarantee you it'll be a challenge, but it'll be a fun challenge that'll reward you, because then you can kind of take some of this away and be like, wow, I didn't know you could do that with your characters. I didn't know you could do that with your designs. So again, yeah, most of this is really just fun studying. Fun, good old studying. Let's see here. Scrolling the chat. And for those of you who are watching live and stuff and wondering what we're doing today, so today's stream is focused on talking about how to study other different art styles. And we're going over things like proportions. We're going to go over shape design with this one. And really, I just kind of want to show you guys some of the things that you can do for your own characters, right? If you are maybe, you know, looking to maybe study or copy another person's art style, right? I've seen a lot of these videos on YouTube, and I'm sure you guys have seen a few of them yourselves, right? Like how to steal from another art style. Personally, I think the word stealing, it's not that it's a bad word. I feel like it's just an inaccurate word, because to me, when I think of stealing, I'm thinking of an artist that just wants to replicate a style, but not really understand what they're doing. You know, I think if you're doing it that way, then yeah, you're kind of like stealing a style. But like, if you really take the time to study someone's work and then emulate what they're doing, I feel like you're not really stealing, right? You're kind of learning from them, and then you're applying what you've learned into your own art. But again, it's all semantics, right? It's all just words at the end of the day. I think if you like an artist, you like what they're doing, take the time to really see what they're doing, and then figure out how you can apply that to your own work. Because I think the payoff is huge. Recycling, yeah. Recycling art styles. And you know, I'm not gonna look, I do that too, okay? Some of my videos are very clickbaity, title wise. You know, it's like, never do this, or like big mistakes that only beginner artists make. It's just not, which is obviously a lie, because there are many mistakes that professional artists make that beginners make too, right? Like, there are just some things that we as artists do that we will continue to do no matter whether or not we're a professional or not, right? For example, I'll give an example here. Even though I work in the industry, I still have many days where I doubt myself as an artist, and I look at my work and I'm like, damn, it's not good enough. How did I even end up in this job? Put an F in the chat if you know what I'm talking about. That good old imposter syndrome. You look at your art, and then one day you just wake up and you're like, bro, I should give up. My art is trash. Like, what is this? You know what I'm saying, chat? Like, it just happens. It's just like things that we do that, you know, we wish doesn't happen, but it does. And obviously, as you get better and stuff, that feeling does go away, or at least like it's easier to kind of combat that type of mentality. But getting rid of it entirely, I think, is like a difficult thing. For me nowadays, what I do is, like, if I ever start feeling that way, I usually take that as an opportunity for me to look at where I can study and push my art further. That's really kind of how I've been doing it recently. It's like, okay, I'm feeling pretty trash about my art. Let's ask myself why. What exactly am I feeling kind of lacking in my art, right? And then I try to write it down, and then I try to make a game plan. Like the other day, my dog's whining right now. But the other day, like last week, actually, I was feeling like my hand drawings were not as good as I wanted them to be, drawing hands. And so I decided to do a 200s hand challenge, where I would draw 200 hands from imagination. And let me tell you, the first 100 hands that I did were horrendous, truly bad. But once I got towards the tail end of it, I realized, like, you know what? I kind of got the hang of it, right? And so these are things that I usually encourage people to do. Not necessarily the 200 hands challenge, because that can be excessive. But, like, you know, take note of what it is that's really making you feel frustrated with your art and stuff. I feel like you never get rid of it. You only try not to let it take you over, or may use it as fuel for improvement. Yeah. I'm trying to think of other things that professionals deal with, that beginner artists also deal with too. I don't know. It's an interesting thing. Let me ask you guys in the chat, what is something that you guys currently struggle with right now with your art? It doesn't have to be like an imposter syndrome. It could be like a technical thing. Like maybe you do struggle with drawing hands or something. Let me see. Yeah, and maybe for some of you, it is time. It is time to do the 200 hands challenge. It's honestly a really fun challenge, because it really taught me a lot about how to simplify the hand. So here's an example, right? This is not like a YouTube short video, but like this is kind of a quick aside here for drawing hands. But like you can really get into understanding how, for example, the hand at the end of the day is just a box, right? we can do it like this first, right? A palm, like so. So here's the basic understanding. Then you have some forms here for the pinky, which if you guys have seen one of my YouTube shorts, you've seen this before. And you have like this section of the thumb is really just the thenar portion of the thumb here. It like juts out 1, 2, 3 like that. Then you have all of these like fingies over here, right? You can combine these if you want. But this is kind of like the hand. This is like the simplest form of the hand. And then from there, you can have like, you can take that same concept and like, let's say you have it facing forward like this, right? Then you can learn some stuff here like the banana technique for adding foreshortening on your hands, right? The good old banana, like so. And then, like you kind of learn all these subtle techniques, but it takes practice, right? Like I think my statement here, or maybe the point I'm trying to make here, is sometimes you just need to create more mileage. You just need to draw more hands to really get comfortable with it. But like, here you go. Here's a hand doing a weird little foreshortening thing with the fingies and you know all of that stuff, right? It's doing this. It's doing this thing. So I think the point I'm trying to make here is sometimes you just got to practice. But knowing what to practice and having a routine for the practice can be huge. Can be huge. Let's see here. But yeah, we're almost done with this one. And then I think what we'll do is we're going to leave, I forgot her name from Gurren Lagann. Damn, does anyone know? Is it Yoko or something? I think it's Yoko. We're going to leave Yoko unfinished because I do want to start taking some of these and we're going to maybe draw our own character proportions and stuff. It's Yoko. Thank you, chat. Real ones remember. Row, row, fight the power. One of my favorite animes of all time. Gurren Lagann, man. It's a beauty. But yeah, we're going to get finished up this leg. Then we'll talk a little bit about the shape design for this one, and you'll kind of see how cool I think the art style of Soul Eater is, because they do a lot of, they're so bold, man. I genuinely think Soul Eater was ahead of its time when it came to art style and animation and all that stuff. Okay, so we've got here basic form. Let me, man, I can't really see the eyes. Oh, actually, I can kind of see it. It's like this. His eyes are very droopy, but it's kind of like this. I think that's his eyes. The picture reference I use, unfortunately, is pretty low res. But I think it's like this. Why does he look so derpy? Hold on. Let me move this eye a little bit more here. And then maybe this eye a little bit more here. Okay, there you go. Do I do 2D animation? So I've done some 2D animation, but I work as a character designer for 2D animation. So yes, I guess so. I've done some before, yes, but not currently. Right now I just work as a character designer. Can I go back to the legs real quick? Yeah, sure. But let me see here. I'm gonna try to actually thicken up the legs just a little bit because I do want to push it a little bit more. And then we should be good to go. There you go. Nice. So some of the things I want to call out here now that we have like these proportions is let's do kind of the same similar approach where we're actually going to look at the height of the character, the proportions of the character, and all of that stuff here. And we'll see we'll see kind of what we can make out of it, right? Because like, what kind of information can we get? Let's guess in the chat. How many heads tall, and I guess YouTube can guess too, how many heads tall do you think this character is? Really quick, I'm gonna move it around so you guys can't try to measure it. Type it in the chat. I'm gonna say maybe 6.5 again. I have a feeling it's gonna be somewhere around 6.5, maybe 7. But I'm gonna say 6.5. I don't know if it's gonna be 6, but let's do a check. This is part of the fun of this. The fun of checking this height. So I'm gonna go like this, top of the head to the chin, like so, right? And let's go ahead and duplicate that, move it down a little bit like so, and we're gonna duplicate it again like so. We're gonna do it one more time like so, and I think it should be about a 6.5, but I think what I did here was the lines are a little thick, but it should be like this, I think, a little bit, and then maybe a little bit of room there. Oh, but also it's the base of the foot. I know why. It's because of his shoes. So the ground is actually like right about here, right? You can kind of see how the ground is right here. So I'd say it's approximately 6.5. It's a little, yeah, but I think a lot of that is like very minute, because it's just the subtlety of how we choose the head. But again, this is a great call out, because if you take a look at the character, let's put away this red here, right? It also very much depends on where we place the top of the head. Because, for example, if we say the top of the head is right here, oh, and actually the chin is like right here, right? And the top of the head is here, like this, like that. Let's go like this, right? Then you can argue that this character is about 6 heads tall, right? 6 heads tall. So maybe let's do it like that. I'm going to say, to make it simpler, let's actually have this character be about 6 heads tall. And I'm just going to move up the spacing, right? So the whole point of this too is so that you don't get too fixated on making your character exactly 6 heads tall, or like making it 6.5 or 7, right? Usually it's more of an approximation. And what's more important is getting the general proportions of the character right, I think, for the most part. But you can kind of see here, I would say, yeah, if we did it like that, it's about 6 heads tall. And that way it ends roughly about where that base of the foot is going to be, like this, right? There you go. Ta-da! Yeah, and some of you might have your characters be exactly 6.9 heads tall for you 69er fans out here in the chat. But let's go ahead now and let's kind of move it over to the side, and let's do some quick kind of general proportions, because here's where it really matters more, right? The head height thing, it's whatever, but look at this. This right here is the halfway mark of the head, and what do we see, right? We see right kind of the same here. It's the bottom of where that pelvis lands, right? Let's kind of go here at the halfway mark from here to here. Where does that land? Right about where the armpits land, roughly, right? And then we have here at like the bottom right here, this half is roughly where the knees are too, right? The bottom of the knees there. So I think, if anything, this right here is probably the more valuable thing to take out, right? And not necessarily the how many heads tall or whatever, but more so the general proportion that the artist is using to convey the character and the consistency of the character. So with that, we have here a couple things. New layer. We're going to say uno heads, 2 heads. Wait, sorry. 1/2 or 1/4, 1/2, 1/4. And then here we'll do in purple, we'll say it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 heads tall. Got it? But now, last but not least, let's talk about shape design, because this is probably the thing that I love the most about this art style, and something that I think you guys can maybe get some value out of as well. So maybe let's use like an orange or something, like a nice dark orange. If you have a super tall teen, would you do 8 or 9 heads to change the face to be young? In this art style, you definitely could. Again, I want to remind you guys, these are just generalizations. I've seen characters that, for example, have, I'll show you, like, I'll do a quick one right here. I've seen characters that have, for example, a small head like this, right? Big trap muscles and a body like this. And then they have like these huge arms, like these Goliath type of arms. Your everyday Kaycem viewer. And then they have legs like this, right? This is like the One Piece style. This is Kuma. Right? So like you can play around with proportions however you like. So don't feel like you have to be fixated on, you know, getting all the measurements and stuff. But those are just some generalizations that you can do if you want to kind of follow kind of a general rule. But doing stuff like this, I will say, is a little bit harder. This is definitely a much more advanced technique. But there you go. Everyday Twitch chat viewer right here. Hey, I'm about to go hit the Kaycem gym real quick. You get what I'm saying? Yeah, not Mr. Kuma. But yeah, there you go. Easy peasy, easy peasy. But now let's get into some of the shape design and some of that there. Let's see. You should learn realism first and then try to find your own style. I think yes and no. And the reason why, is honestly just because for me, I think that every artist already has an art style, right? You already have an art style, whether you like it or not. Art style really is less about trying to make your characters look like an anime or whatever, but it's actually all about all the collective decision choices that you make as an artist, right? How you, for example, draw eyes, how you color your characters, how you design the clothing. All of these things are collective choices that you make. And as you know, when you're a beginner, right? When you're first starting out as a beginner, you really don't know what you want to do, right? Beginners oftentimes explore everything. They're like 1 week you might like this artist's style, and then another month you might like another artist's style, right? Like, put an F in the chat if you know what I'm talking about. You're kind of like jumping around and you're like, man, I kind of like this style, but I kind of like this style. Oh, I kind of like how they drew the face this way, right? And so oftentimes beginners will explore so many different things, and so you haven't really solidified your own choices and decision making. So realism is one way to approach solving that, because if you're studying realism, it, one, allows you to kind of limit your scope of the decisions you make, but two, it also gives you an understanding of why certain artists do something like, for example, a dot nose, right? Like, why does this dot nose exist? Obviously, in reality, the nose is not just a little dot like this, right? It's got more structure and form, but understanding realism does help you to understand why those things exist. But again, it's not the only thing you should be doing. It's just one way to do it, right? You could do stuff like this also. You can kind of go like this and really understand some of the artist's decisions and really ask yourself why they're doing that. I think that's also beneficial. So it's like yes and no for me. I think studying from realism is great, but also don't let it limit you from exploring other styles and learning how to break those down too. So, because, for example, I know that some of you might be stuck in the study hell, right? How many of you in the chat know what I'm talking about? You feel like you keep studying, you've been studying, and you're like, Kaycem, I'm just waiting to get better, man. I'm waiting to get better so that I can finally find my style. Right? But you keep studying, you keep watching tutorial videos, you keep doing this and that, but it's like, hey, you're ready, kid. Take my hand. You got this. Go draw. Get out there. You don't gotta be stuck in the study hell. Okay? Yeah, you can study, but like, go draw your own stuff too. Your style was always within you along the way, you know, whatever, you know, it was the friends we made along the way type of you know, statement. So that's the other thing that I want to call out, right? It's like, go study, you know, watch these videos, watch other videos and stuff, but also just know that you're ready. You're already there, man. Okay? take my hand, chat. take my hand. All right. Anyways, some of the things I'm calling out here is just some of the sharp angles that the artist is using. I love, for example, like the flaring here of the boots. Goated. Oh God, it's so beautiful. Let me see real quick, actually. Yeah, look at this. You see that? I'll show you guys what they're doing. 1, 2, buckle my shoe. Like, look at that. Sharp angles. That's how they do it. Look at these huge. This is the subtlety of design, right? Nice straights, and then they put a bend here. Why do they put a bend here? And then why do they put a bend here? It tells you two things very simply. One, it tells you where the bending of the fold is going to be. Two, it tells you where the elbow is going to be. Look at this style versus the other style that we covered here, right? Two very different approaches for expressing the bend of an elbow. Look at that. Two bends. 1, 2, right? So again, when you learn all these things, you can kind of study and see what they're doing. Same thing on this side. Look at this. Huge straight. And then what do? A little curve to let you know that the forms are there. Same thing with the legs, right? Bunch of straights, straight, and then why do they put them there? It's to denote the details, right? This is where they want you to look. So they say, hey, the legs right here, you don't need to worry about the legs, but look at the feet. Look at the feet. They're like, look at it. We want you to really look at it. Why? Because look at all the details we put here. Look at all the details we put on the shoe, right? These are artistic choices. So don't just copy these to copy these and be like, oh, okay, I guess this is how every single pants should be drawn, right? Really understand what the artist is trying to do. And then that will take your art to like a whole nother level. It's very intentional. If you look at this, this is actually a technique. This is a technique you see all the time in animation. It's I forgot the terminology. Let me think if I remember. It's I think it's like level of like density or something. It's like density of the details, right? So you'll notice how, for example, if you look at the areas of the clothing or areas of the character that are the most detailed, they're also the part of the character that stand out the most, right? The head right here has the most details. The shoes has the most details, and everything else that you don't need to care about for the character, this right here, you don't need to have details for them, right? Because that's not what the artist wants you to look at. When the artist wants you to look at when they see this character is, hey, this character, they got dope shoes, they got a dope head, and they've maybe got like these puffy sleeves, right? So another valuable technique here that you can learn from studying another artist's style is seeing what they emphasize. But if you take a look at this artist over here, some of the things that they were emphasizing was really the jacket, right? They put a lot of detail on the jacket up here and a lot of detail on the hair, which obviously you can't see it here, but you get what I'm saying? Like the utilizing details, but also lack of detail is what's going to take your art to that next level. Because I hate to say it, chat, but put an F in the chat here if you have ever tried to draw a character and you drew all the details. You're like, I gotta add the folds here, I gotta add the folds here like this, let me put a little bit of wrinkle here, let me like draw every like strand of the character's hair like this. Like every little square inch of your drawing has to be highly detailed, right? This is a beginner mistake I see all the time. It's like, I gotta put the clothing, I gotta put the details, I gotta put this. Let's draw every single zipper. Every single tooth of the zipper must be drawn. You don't gotta do that, chat. Okay? You don't got to. Hey man, sometimes you can show more by doing less. Come here, let me say this again. Hey, you. Sometimes you can show more by doing less. Does that make sense, chat? You get what I'm saying? Do less. Stop working so hard out here. Y'all making yourself sweat. Okay? Just do less. It's okay. But there you go. That's going to be the end of this YouTube video. I hope you guys did enjoy it. This is going to be the part here where my Twitch chat does say bye YouTube out here. If you guys want to see the rest of this stream, make sure to come check me out on Twitch. Otherwise, everybody out here say bye to my YouTube viewers. And yeah, also like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow me on Twitch and all of that stuff. See ya, YouTubers. Do less. Do less. Do less.